The Miami Heat are doing the impossible through their 2023 playoff run so far, or should I say, Jimmy Butler is doing the impossible. Miami was able to knock off the top seed Milwaukee Bucks in just 5 games. Despite being the 8th seed, it appeared that the Heat were in control of the series almost the entire time. Today we're going to break down the Heat's regular season performance, how they got into the playoffs through the play-in, the historic series against the Milwaukee Bucks, their second round matchup against the New York Knicks, and if this team has what it takes to win it all. Now, when I said Jimmy Butler was doing the impossible, obviously the whole team contributes to the efforts, but the Miami Heat had a very mediocre regular season. They comfortably made the play-in tournament, finishing with a record of 44-38. This was enough to land them the 8th seed in the Eastern Conference. The Heat have a very talented roster of veterans like Jimmy Butler and Kyle Lowry. You pair that with young players that have star potential like Bam Adebayo and Tyler Hero, it's a recipe for disaster for the rest of the league. Now, I know the Heat are missing out on Tyler Hero right now, but if they do make the finals, he has a chance to play. Butler did the bulk of the heavy lifting for the Heat this season, to no surprise. He led the team in points, steals, and assists per game with 22.9, 1.8, and 5.3 respectively. Jimmy ranked 5th in the league in steals, 2nd in steals per game, 18th in true shooting percentage, 6th in player efficiency rating, 3rd in win shares, 3rd in offensive win shares, 3rd in steal percentage, and 4th in value over replacement player. Although he didn't fill up the stat sheet nearly as much through the regular season, Butler was still one of the top players in the league. Adebayo was also one of the top defenders in the league this season and was running for Defensive Player of the Year award. He led the team in rebounds and blocks per game with 9.2 and 0.8 respectively. Adebayo ranked 15th in the league in total rebounds, 17th in rebounds per game, 20th in offensive rebounds, 16th in defensive rebounds, and 18th in minutes played. Tyler Hero also led the league in free throw percentage this season. With the Heat clinching the 8th seed by 3 games, they were set to take on the 7th-seeded Atlanta Hawks in the first round of the 2023 play-in. In the first round of the play-in tournament, the Miami Heat looked like a completely different team than the one that would go on to shock the Milwaukee Bucks. They were defeated by the Atlanta Hawks by a final score of 116-105. Typically, the Miami Heat win the 50-50 plays and fight hard on the boards for rebounds. However, this was not the case in this game. They were out-rebounded by the Hawks 63-39 and allowed Atlanta to pull down 22 offensive rebounds in this game. On top of this, Clint Capella nearly out-rebounded the entire Heat roster, finishing the game with 21 rebounds. Although the Heat did a great job of defending Atlanta, all of their extra opportunities due to these offensive rebounds would end up giving them the edge in this game. Along with this, the Heat did not get much production from their bench outside of Kyle Lowry. Outside of the veteran point guard, Miami only got 4 points out of their bench unit compared to Atlanta's 53 bench points. It was clear that the Heat would not get far playing this way, and they owned that fact. In a post-game interview, Jimmy Butler was quoted as saying, "Come Friday, we have to play the legit exact opposite of how we played tonight." Kyle Lowry would then lead the team in points with his 33-point effort. Bam Adebayo led the charge in rebounds with 9, and Jimmy Butler finished the game with a team-high 9 assists. With their backs against the wall, facing elimination in the second round of the play-in, the Heat would find themselves matched up against the Chicago Bulls. Miami had an incredible defensive game, which was led on offense by Jimmy Butler and Max Strus, who both had a 31-point performance. The Heat also had a much better performance on the boards in this game as well, out-rebounding the Bulls 51-37. Adebayo would once again lead the team in rebounds with 17. Point guard Tyler Hero would lead the Heat in assists with 7, but once again, the Heat did not get much scoring help from their bench unit. However, they ran an extremely tight 8-man rotation in this matchup. After the game, head coach Eric Spoelstra was quoted as saying, "Our team has obviously not been perfect this year, but I do know one thing about the men in that locker room. The last 48 hours, I know how categorically, unequivocally, how badly and desperately our group wanted to get into this damn thing and get into the playoffs to have an opportunity to compete for a title." As soon as the Heat had punched their tickets to the playoffs, they were already being written off by almost everybody. The Milwaukee Bucks were one of the favorites to make it out of the Eastern Conference, and after a very impressive regular season they had put together, it appeared that Miami would have little to no chance of stopping them. But what they would do in the next 5 games would go on to shock the entire NBA world. Coming into this series against the Bucks, the Milwaukee Bucks were listed as negative 1,100 favorites to win the first round series against the Miami Heat, while the Heat were plus 650 underdog. Now, if you guys aren't experienced bettors, this means that you would have to have bet $1,100 on the Bucks to win just $100, and if you put $100 on the Heat, you would have profited $650. It was very clear that Vegas even believed this series was over before it even began. However, the Heat would come out and shock the Bucks in game 1. Miami would go on to win game 1 by a final score of 130 to 117, and both teams would take massive losses in the form of injuries, unfortunately. The Heat would lose Tyler Hero to a broken hand, while Giannis Antetokounmpo would be forced to leave the game after taking a hard fall on his tailbone. Jimmy Butler would lead the Heat in this game with points and assists with 35 and 11 respectively, while Bam Adebayo would once again lead the team in rebounds with 9. With Giannis sidelined, it appeared that the Heat would have a real chance of winning this series, but they may have gotten too far ahead of themselves and let their guard down with the former MVP sideline. The Bucks would go on to win game 2 by a final score of 138 to 122. This was very concerning for the Heat because this was an opportunity to take a early 2-0 lead and steal 2 games on the road. Miami's starting unit struggled in this game. Jimmy Butler still led the team in points with 25. However, Cody Zeller would pull in the most rebounds with 8, and Caleb Martin led the Heat in assists with 6. Antetokounmpo would also be ruled out for game number 3, and this time, Miami took full advantage of the opportunity. They won in dominant fashion by a final score of 121 to 99. The Heat were extremely efficient from the field and from 3. Jimmy Butler notched another team high 30-point performance. Bam Adebayo and Caleb Martin would tie for the most rebounds with 11, and Adebayo would step up as a distributor in this game with 6 assists. In game 4, the Heat proved that they were more than capable of beating Milwaukee at full strength. Even with Giannis back on the floor and performing well, they were still able to edge out a 119 to 114 win, taking a 3-1 series lead. Jimmy Butler in this game would make Miami Heat history, going for 56 points and setting the record for most points scored in a playoff game by a Miami player. This is extremely impressive, especially when you're taking into account that superstars like LeBron James and Dwayne Wade both spent a considerable amount of time with this franchise. Butler and Caleb Martin would tie with the team best 9 rebounds, and Gabe Vincent would lead the team in assists with 8. Now, despite holding a commanding 3-1 lead in this series, many people still believe that the Bucks had what it took to put together an incredible comeback. But the Heat did not give them a chance to even win another game. In a nail-biter that went to overtime, Miami would win by a final score of 128 to 126. Butler carried on from his 56-point outburst in Game 4 with another dominant 42-point performance. Bam Adebayo would lead the team in rebounds and assists with 10 each in a 20-point triple-double. After the game, Butler spoke on the excellent chemistry that the team had, saying, "We're a resilient group. We stick together through everything." Butler had put together one of the most impressive playoff series in recent history, and the Heat became the 5th number 8 seed to ever make it past the first round. Along with this, they became the only play-in team to ever win an NBA series. They made a huge statement in this series, and with Milwaukee eliminated from the playoffs, the Eastern Conference has become wide open for anybody to take. Now the question lies, can they actually eliminate the New York Knicks? Objectively speaking, the Bucks were a much better team than New York, and if the Heat were capable of knocking out Milwaukee in only 5 games, I think they definitely have what it takes to make at least the Eastern Conference Finals. Jimmy Butler is playing like a man on a mission right now, and the Heat's roster is composed of veteran players who have years of playoff experience and have played through these big moments before. On the flip side, the Knicks are still a very young team and have not seen the playoffs too much. If they're able to contain players like Jalen Brunson and maybe Julius Randle if he gets healthy, they shouldn't really have any trouble outsourcing the Knicks. Bam Adebayo is going to have to come up big in this series on the boards as usual. In their previous series, New York did an amazing job of pulling in offensive rebounds, and their center Mitchell Robinson finished the series averaging 9.8 rebounds per game with 18 rebounds in the closeout game. Now, like we just previously discussed, Miami does have the luxury of having Julius Randle out at least the first game, if not the first 2 games with this ankle injury. Who knows how long he's actually going to be out for. My honest prediction of how far the Heat are going to go, I think that they beat the New York Knicks and then lose to the Boston Celtics. If and only if the Celtics chemistry can get to 100%. I know there's some things going on with Jaylen Brown right now, and if things end up going sideways, all I gotta say is watch out for playoff Jimmy.